You and everyone you know and love are going to die. Now, this is quite an unsettling truth and something we don't really want to think about, but I want to share a perspective that allows this reality to actually bring liberation, and it offers quite a lot of freedom instead of fear. So when you face this and you really ponder on the fact that you're not going to be here forever. I'll share a quick story. Yesterday I celebrated my first Ash Wednesday Mass at the start of Lent. Never done this before. And during the Mass, the priest puts ashes on your forehead and says the piece of scripture, which is Genesis 3:19. Remember that you are dust, and to dust you shall return. So for the rest of the Mass, I think that's the idea. You're meant to ponder on this and you're meant to think about it. But I had already, the question to be or not to be. A lot of people do really think about this, and I'd already thought about it. So I kind of had my answer, but it was nice to have this to think about. So when you really think about it, ponder on the fact that you're going to die. You realise two things. One, there is a sense of urgency. Whatever you're going to do during this life, you only have a set amount of time to do it, so you better get on with it. And two, it gives you a sense of freedom. All these things you're worried about and all these fears you have of what other people think about you or what the outcome's going to be, it all goes in the end. It all goes back to dust. It doesn't really matter. This isn't an excuse to do degenerate things and be a bad person. I see it as like permission to do good and shine your light in this world, because we often stifle ourselves because we think, oh, I don't know what that person's going to think of me. You're going to die. They're going to die. They're worried about their life and their fear of death. So they're not focused on you. So this actually liberated me. It motivated me to get on with the things that I want to do. And it gave me the freedom to do it, because I realised, well, everybody else is in this same predicament. They all have this fear of death. So I think it was Eckhart Tolle said, all fear is fear of death, and all knowledge is knowledge of self. Now you can ponder on that for about 5 years, and that's what I've done. And I think I understand what he's saying now. So the realisation that you're going to die can be the end of all fear, because if all fear is fear of death, anything else shouldn't actually scare you. So I'll give you an example in my life. I wanted to be a YouTuber since when YouTube came out. So this is like over 10 years ago, I think. And I remember this was like a childhood dream of mine. Before YouTube, I had cameras, I was a photographer. I take pictures of everything. I've been a professional photographer. It's kind of like a vocation. I would see beauty and I wanted to capture it. And I wanted to be a YouTuber. But I had a lot of fear associated with it. I always wanted to film... I always wanted to film somebody else, and I never wanted to get behind the camera myself, because I thought, oh, it's cringy, my friends are going to judge me, and I had all these negative fears associated with it. It took me 10 years to get over this, and I saw a comment yesterday. Somebody said, like, you're so brave going on camera, well done for doing what you're doing. And they wanted to do a similar thing, but obviously it was fear that was holding them back. And I can relate. That comment really struck me, because it was 10 years of fear. I didn't act on it for 10 years. And it was the realization that I'm going to die. You better get on with it. You've been putting this thing off for 10 years. You're going to die one day and you can't do it. So you might as well get on with it now. So that's the motivating side of the fact that you're going to die. Then the freedom. Well, if I do say something silly on camera or people judge me negatively, I'm going to die one day and it's not going to matter. And the people watching are going to die one day and they're not going to remember. And I realised everybody's just focused on themselves anyway. So they judge me for about 5 seconds and then they're over it. So all of these fears are less bad than the fear of death. So if all fear is fear of death, I thought, well, it's not going to kill me. If I go on camera, say something silly or controversial and everybody thinks I'm an idiot, I'm not dead. It's still not, I'm not gonna die from it. So all fear is fear of death. And none of my fears manifest. It was cringy. I've done YouTube for about a year without much success, learning the ropes and just talking about what I was into. And nobody ridiculed me. I mean, I get some negative comments, but the fears were not real. So do the thing you fear and the death of fear is certain. I'm pretty sure that's a Ralph Waldo Emerson quote. And the opposite's been true. More recently, I'm getting, because it's my peers, it's my friends that I went to school with, that I thought, oh, they might think it's a bit weird. But I had a good friend, so Harry, if you're watching this, if this video shows up for you, I appreciate your message. I had a good friend message me and say, seen your recent videos, and he resonates with them, he likes them. And I didn't expect that, because it's a bit cringy. So you have to do the thing you fear. And if you realise it's not going to kill you, then you might as well get on with it. And you've only got a certain amount of time to do it, so there's urgency there. And I've had a bit of a strange relationship with fear, because I don't actually fear death. I had a motorbike that was extremely fast, and we would go to the Isle of Man, and I would ride over the mountain at 140 mile an hour. That's legal over there because of their national speed limit laws. I could have died like that, and I didn't fear death. But at the same time, I had social anxiety, and I would fear going to the supermarket and talking to the checkout person. I would rehearse that in my head 10 times. Hello, how are you? Very strange. What the fear is irrational. What an irrational fear to have, talking to somebody at a checkout. But I'll ride my motorbike over the mountain with cliff edge drops at 140. Able to die at any moment. Very strange. But when you realise you're going to die, something's going to get you, then the fear drops away. I shouldn't be scared of talking to somebody at a checkout, and I definitely shouldn't be scared of putting up a YouTube video, because all fear is fear of death, and if it's not death that you're facing, then there's no need to fear it. So I heard, I'm not sure how true this is, that everybody has two inbuilt fears. The first is the fear of heights, and that's because our brain is at the top of our body. It's the furthest away from the floor, so it's kind of a built-in fear, because if you fall over and hit your head, that could be the end of your life, that could be death. Whereas other body parts, like for example, my uncle had a motorbike accident in his 20s and had to have one of his legs amputated, but it hasn't affected his, you can remove an arm or a leg and it's not as bad as if you damage your brain. So we're all built with the fear of heights, and we're all built with the fear of public speaking. And I'm not sure what the psychology or the reason is behind that. So I think it was kind of normal and natural that I had a lot of resistance to talking on camera. So that is an inbuilt fear for some reason. So having pondered on this for a long time, I've come to the conclusion that the fear of death is really a fear of having never lived. It's a fear of regret, basically. So when you think about it, you are ashes, and to ashes you will return. That should inspire these two things. It should motivate you and say, you've only got a certain amount of time to do this, so you better live your life. If you've got fears holding you back, I had the fear of making YouTube videos for 10 years. It held me back. I would have died with regrets. And I know this isn't a big thing, it's YouTube videos, but they've had a lot of positive impact. They've helped a lot of people. So don't use this as an excuse to go on a rampage doing degenerate things, because you do have a moral compass. So you have a certain amount of time, but use it to do good in the world. So allow the realization of your mortality to give you urgency, to give you motivation, but to also give you the freedom to not have the fears. So do the things that you're called to do. Shine your light in this world. So I find this interesting because I'm approaching Christianity with faith, but also with logic. And if you just look at that statement, remember that you are dust, and to dust you shall return. That's just the truth. That's reality. It's in the scripture, but it could be your dad saying it. Your dad could be like, remember, mate, you're going to die one day, so don't worry too much about what people think, and you better get on with it. Whatever you want to do in this life, you better do it. Don't have fears hold you back. That's just great advice. So that's the Bible verse for today. Genesis 3:19. Remember that you are dust, and to dust you shall return. So I'd invite you to ponder on that and allow the realization that you're going to die to give you freedom, give you urgency, and do what it is you want to do. And when you think about the fear of death, you fear death because you don't know what comes after. So if you have faith and you have a belief system that tells you what happens after death, and the Catholic faith has a pretty robust idea of what happens after death, and I believe in that perspective, but that might not be the case for you. You might believe in reincarnation or whatever. Then you don't fear death anymore. So that's where faith and belief comes in, but that's a topic for another video. So I hope that helps. Speak to you soon.